Morning, folks. Another episode of Burning Platform. Real pleasure to have Tomas O'Leary from Dublin, Ireland today. Tomas, thank you for joining me. He is one of the founders of Origina, which is in the third-party support business for IBM legacy products. But today we're going to talk about a little bit more of his passion around this whole, what he calls free ICT. You know, there's too much control over what people can do once they buy a product. And, you know, there's been a backlash against that. And Tomas has been helping people think through some of the issues. Welcome, Tomas. How's Dublin?
Dublin is very nice. It's a sunny day here in Dublin, and not as warm, I imagine, as Tampa is, but we're enjoying the weather, enjoying the summer, and it's great to be on your show.
Well, that's a rare day if you have a sunny, not much rain in Ireland, but I'm glad you're enjoying some of that.
Thank you.
Well, so, Tomas, spend a minute talking about yourself, brag about yourself, talk about Origina, and then where'd you get the idea for free ICT and why now, and what do you see as the opportunities, obstacles, etc.?
Yeah, I'd love to do that. Thank you, Vinnie. Yeah. Obviously, I run a business called Origina. I set it up back in 2012 with a colleague of mine, Ronan Donoghue, and we're an independent provider of IBM support, software maintenance. We're part of a very fast-growing industry, actually. So kind of a component of the technology, enterprise technology space, which is to provide options and choice to large enterprise customers for a better service at a lower cost, and choices that they can control the very expensive technology and enterprise assets, software assets that they have in their environments. We set it up in 2012. We've grown the business quite significantly over the last 10 years now. 10 years, we're going our 10th party during the summer, anniversary party. So we're looking forward to that. So we've grown this. We now operate in 18 different countries.
Oh, wow.
We provide support for approximately 800 IBM products, all perpetually licensed products, both distributed and soon to be mainframe products as well on top of that. And we typically work with some of the largest companies and IBM customers in the world. So that business has been a passion of mine, but it's not the only passion of mine. The other passion is because we really want to, we talk about it in our business, that we want to change the software world. And there's many things that technology has done that has been amazing, and software has done that has been amazing for industries and for communities and for the planet. But there are many things that are just terrible. And I think, you know, when we look at some of those things, particularly in enterprise software space, the support increasingly is in terms of maintenance from the software vendors is appalling. It's really poor support. It's almost any reason in the world not to their triage is not to triage the problem. The triage is to find a scripted way to delay while they try and find the resources that they've let go. Their innovation is next to zero in many cases for many of the products. And many of the companies, like, for example, the company we compete with, IBM, or many other large enterprise software companies, they really have struggled to provide value to customers, find new innovative ways of doing business with customers, and have resorted to kind of nasty tactics like software audits, complicated license, continually overcomplicating licensing rules, making it almost difficult for customers to understand what they're allowed to do with the software, what they're not allowed to do, artificial end of life of software. So all of these things, I guess, I was looking at it going, nobody is there standing up for the customer. Nobody's giving them options and choice. So when in 2012, when I set up the business, I looked around, none of these choices were out there. And the challenges that existed, as I saw in an emerging software maintenance business, those challenges had been around for a number of years in the data center repair business. So back in 2014, I got together with a number of companies here in Europe, and we set up an organization called Free ICT because we figured actually the big major vendors, the OEMs, the mega vendors, the big tech companies, they dominate the news, they dominate the media, they dominate the propaganda. And to get past that, to convince people that there should be choice, to convince people that there should be options, you really need to move your argument to a higher level. So my thought was,
it's not just
what?
software, right? I mean, same principles apply on hardware, printers. It's a broader,
absolutely, yeah. It's everywhere.
Technology, and it's increasingly moving to the John Deere's, and everybody seems to have borrowed the model to say, buy from me and allow me to keep servicing it, right? And
yeah,
so,
well, I think what's happened is we've allowed a misinterpretation of a free market, and we've allowed the interpretation to be, I've got a free market if I can obviously innovate and sell and create a market for myself, for my business, my service, and then when I get very big, my free market allows me then to control what my customers do because I want them to continue to buy from me. And that's not what I think is a free market. Free market is where you could always have choice. You always have options. And unfortunately, if you just allow the market to operate exactly as it's going to operate, you will end up eventually with monopolistic tactics. And you've got to find some way to find there's a balance. Everything in life is about a balance, a yin and a yang, or whatever it is. It's always a balance. And to me, to bring that balance is to have obviously another voice to the table, but to talk to legislators. So Free ICT initially started in Brussels to talk to legislators about where was the balance, pointing out some of the tactics that the major OEMs played in the marketplace, things we now see in 2022 when you look at what's happening in Congress in the United States and things in Brussels, where actually the right to repair is always accepted. But back in 2014, when we started Free ICT, it was a kind of an unknown concept. People didn't realize it was even necessary. I remember one day, Vinnie, going to see a policymaker in Brussels back into early on in the conversation, and he didn't really understand what the big deal was. Why were we there? He says, look, his view was there was always going to be change. We're going to need more technology all the time. And he goes, I buy new technology. It's so cost effective. And I was like, okay, well, what happens if you did want to fix your product? Well, I could fix it. I said, well, I took out his phone. I said, go up with your phone then. Find the battery in your phone. See, can you take your phone? And he couldn't. He goes, it suddenly dawned on him, actually, yeah, how do you do it? Well, they said that they've deliberately created a situation where they don't want you to fix the technology. This was certainly back then. It is beginning to change, thankfully, but very slowly. And it's great now because I think back in 2014 when we started, nobody had a clue what we were talking about,
So Tomas, let's look at it from the other side, right? Because when I talk to a lot of Fortune 500 industrial companies, they go, look, products are so easy to commoditize, right? Global competition, anyone can copy a product in 3 or 4 years. Services, on the other hand, are much more difficult to, if you deliver it right, if it's high quality and all that, much more difficult to copy. Okay. I mean, someone like you can provide an alternative service, but their worry is more people who just come and copy and pretend to be able to provide that service. So there is a trend in the industrial sector, which is called servitization. The product companies are saying more and more of my revenues are going to come from post-sale service, right? Shouldn't they be allowed to at least try that? Just like you should be allowed to provide an alternative service. Shouldn't they be thinking about that?
Well, they should be. Yeah, 100%. They should be, because that's where the model is going to have to go to. You think about, ultimately what goes into every piece of tech that we use. Every piece of tech has multiple raw materials that huge numbers are in scarce supply and going to be increasingly. So we don't have an everlasting conveyor belt of resources. Whether you care about the environment or don't care about the environment, it's just purely down to, if you're in a production line, there's just not enough things going to come down that production line. Not going to be able to find them. So what do you do? So you've got to figure out. So the new economic models are going to be about extending. The products are going to have to have a longer lives. So if they're going to have a longer life,
the whole circular economy thinking
has to be because it's just unless we find another planet, there's only so many things on this planet. It's only so big. There's 8 billion people on the planet. So maybe we're going to be 10 within the next decade or so. So we're going to have serious issues in terms of the resources on this planet. We're going to have a new economic model. And the sooner those big companies buy into that, the better for all of us. We're doing it as a small, innovative company. And there's many, many companies like us. We are making waves and we're making moves, but it's got to be more than just us doing it. And they have to buy into that too.
And so give me a couple of examples of people who have used ICT partners, ICT components that you brought together, and how are they influencing their IT roadmaps?
Oh, listen, we've over 130 customers that work with us alone. I mean, there's tens of thousands of companies globally, hundreds of thousands of globally who've dealt with, the independent aftermarket. Like Free ICT represents, initially it's set up by the independent aftermarket. So aftermarket is sale, secondary sale or secondary service or anything that happens after the primary sale. The reality is all markets have an aftermarket, and all markets, the biggest player in those markets are the primary actors, so the original manufacturers of the equipment or the original software publishers or whatever. But we represent the independent sector. Companies have always used independent organizations. So, the benefits they get are clearly...
Like I wrote a note 10, 12 years ago where I said, if you buy a premium automobile, right, the chances that you'll go back to the dealer are lower than you going to an independent garage, because you probably get much more customized service, much more premium service, frankly, from an independent garage. And that's true in any sector, right? So why not in technology?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, you'll get a far better service. You'll get a lot more innovation. And what's happening in our industry is that the people with the knowledge are no longer in the premium car manufacturer. They're actually out in the marketplace, and they're hard to find. And there's less of them out there. And so what we've done is we've put them back together as a service model back to the customers, so they can drive that car for as long as they like. They can keep the car on the road for as long as they like. And in fact, actually, we can make that car go sometimes faster than it was before. We can make it more comfortable than it was before. And we make the whole experience better, and all of that done at a lower cost. Why wouldn't you do it? It's like this. It's almost a no-brainer.
So you started off in the EU. You've also started Free ICT in the US. Tell us a little bit about the US endeavor and how much progress have you made? Yeah,
well, so we've set the organization up. We have a number of organizations on board as angel donors initially. So we've got organizations from the independent software maintenance sector, independent aftermarket for software like ourselves, and a company out of Denver, Colorado called Spinnaker Support. Yep. We've got organizations from the independent data center repair business, for example, who one of them is called Service Express, based out of Michigan, Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we've got part of the supply chain in that industry, a company called Tech Buyer, also based out of northeast of the United States. So we've got quite a number of kind of industry players. Plus, we've got representative organizations, including Free ICT in Europe, providing some input and experience through representatives in Europe, and also an organization based out of San Diego called the Service Industry Association, which is a kind of a wider representative organization. So initially, it is like we did in Europe, it's the industry itself setting this up. However, in both instances, and we're seeing this in Europe, we spent a lot of time talking with and to and for the the end users, the ultimate consumers of the product who benefit from the choice. And we're seeing a huge amount of take up in Europe over the last number of years, particularly with end user organizations, for example, in France, organizations like CRIP in France, and sort of CIO based organizations in the Netherlands and Germany and in Switzerland. So we've engaged, and in Belgium. So we've engaged with a number of these organizations and had conversations with them, working with their members to say, listen, this is really important for you, for choice, obviously, for the economic impact, but also the sustainability angle, which is it's a big thing for all organizations, particularly the very large companies. And it's going to be exactly the same in the United States. So we're going to get it up and running by the industry, for the industry initially, but obviously longer term, this is for those large end user organizations. Because if we disappeared, where would they go? What choice would they have? I don't know whether you know this, Vinnie. There used to be we all used to get our TV repair. That doesn't exist anymore, right? So there used to be organizations like conferences around the world where independent TV repair organizations used to go. It doesn't exist. It's been wiped off the map. We let that happen. Now, we could argue, oh, well, TVs aren't that expensive they're relatively not that expensive compared to what they were before. But actually, you could be sure the profit margins are sufficient that if there was a proper independent repair organization, there's more value to be driven out of that industry potentially. We don't need that to happen, and we shouldn't happen in a part of the economy that's many times bigger.
We moved to a disposable society, and we're seeing a backlash against that, right? The whole circular economy thinking is around why waste, why not repair, why not extend life, like you say. So, yeah. There's a lot of other reasons beyond just cost and independent and controlling your own destiny and all that come into play. So what are you finding from the regulators? Are they smarter about this? Are they still not sure? What are you finding?
No, they're very smart. They get it. They get it. And it's phenomenal when you knock on the door. You knock on the door and you go see policymakers or legislators. In either, we in January we did a tour of Washington for 4 days, and we had an excellent meeting with Congressman Dan Morelli out of New York, and we went in to see Senator Ted Cruz's team and a number of other senators and congressmen in DC just to have an initial conversation, and it was incredible that they were totally switched on. They totally got it. They understand this is, and it's actually a bipartisan kind of topic, which is very, very rare, as you can imagine, in today's world.
These days,
and, yeah. I mean, everybody has their own angle, but the reality is nobody can argue. It's not good for the economy, and it's not good for businesses, no matter what side of the aisle you're on, that you don't have choice, that you have challenges would relate to the economics of this stuff, plus also the lack of the jobs. Like you look at the jobs here in Europe, we did a report from Deloitte where we looked at back in 2019 the size of the aftermarket, the enterprise aftermarket. Okay, it was approximately $50 billion. Let's call it, and about 4 billion of that was estimated to be the independent aftermarket. So less than 10% of the independent aftermarket. In terms of jobs in Europe, 220,000 jobs in a $50 billion market, which is pretty small for the size of the market, okay? But of the independent sector, about 50,000. So over 20% of the jobs on the ground for less than 10%. So talk about bang for buck in terms of jobs alone. There's a significant impact there. And then you look at extending the life of the products. In some instances, we can more than double the life of some of the products. We were talking earlier today, just actually where I was before I joined your podcast, with some legislators in Brussels. We were explaining to them that the independent aftermarket already operates really successfully and is an important actor in the market. For example, the nuclear power stations, they're not built for the 4 or 5 year or 7 year max life cycle of a server. They're built for 30 years plus. So the technology that goes in there has to be looked after. The launch systems for the European Space Agency, they also have a 20-year plus lifespan. The technology needs to be able to last that long. So you're talking about who provides the service. That's the independent aftermarket. That's who does the service. It's not the primary actor anymore. He's washed his hands of it. Doesn't care anymore. So where it suits.
That may be changing. I'm seeing a lot of industrial companies look at these long lives of assets and actually see a revenue model around it. So, but I agree with you. They should do it, but they should allow others to also do it. Allow the customers to do it themselves if they want, right? That's
exactly.
Don't
lock people in. Don't close choice. Leave it. There's still an economic model there for the manufacturer. There's still an economic model there for the publisher of the software. The primary actor can make a lot of money still. That's not the quick question here. What we're saying here is that you don't. If you spend all your energy trying to control things, then actually that's all you'll ever try and do. You won't look for the new opportunities. You'll just be trying to protect what you have. You see it in sport all the time. Here in Europe, we there was a Premier League. I don't know if you follow the United States, the football. It's big here in Ireland because obviously it's going across the water in the UK. Sure. The team that won it, the team they were against, they were 2-0 down, and that they took off the striker. They went in defense mode, and they ended up losing anyway. So you know what I mean? So it's just if you're just thinking about defense, that's it. You have to be thinking about offense as well. And we need to enable that. I think this is good for them. This is good for the primaries. This is good for the whole industry.
Well, there's a series called Ted Lasso that's been popular in the US. It's all about
I've seen it. It's pretty good.
Football coach who
goes to Britain.
UK team.
Yeah.
God knows how that happened, but but you make a good analogy. We got to keep moving the ball forward.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts?
Final thoughts are, I think the time is ripe for a movement like Free ICT. What I would love, if you have listeners who are involved in end user organizations, that they would reach out to me on through yourself or at my, I can give you my details afterwards. I'd love to hear from people. I'm easily found on LinkedIn to see how you can participate, because it's the end users that need to participate. It's the end user who benefit from this. And now is the time. Now is the time. You wouldn't, when we set this organization up in 2014, nobody was talking about right to repair. Now they are. So now is the time.
But Thomas, love your passion, and especially on the circular economy, you got me fairly interested, and I'm always pro-choice. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Vinnie. And sorry if I went on a little bit much. The way if you say give a Mick a mic.
Love your passion.
You've heard the phrase "give a Mick a mic."
Hey, nice to have somebody who watches out for, look, it's all about free markets. Is all about different points of view, so thank you for bringing a different point of view here.
Appreciate that. Vinnie, listen, thanks for having me. Best of luck.
Thank you.